I'm Stacey with Nutrition Jobs, and today I've got the most amazing topic. I am super excited to have you here joining us talking about a very, very significant topic, and that is communicating nutrition as dietitians. And I know that, as we signed up to be dietitians, of course, that's what we signed up to do. We signed up to talk to our patients, we signed up to talk to our business associates, we signed up to just communicate nutrition in general. And I have learned that is so much more nuanced. There's so many more aspects to help us communicate more effectively. And that can make a huge difference in our careers, our earning potential, and how we can reach our audience. And again, how we can make more opportunities, more career opportunities, and make more money as dietitians. And so I feel like we really need to hone our expertise, learn how to more effectively communicate nutrition. And to do that, we need a guide. And so we have an amazing authoritative guide with us today, with me today, and that is Barbara Mayfield. Welcome, Barbara. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Stacey. It's my pleasure to be here today.
So if you don't know Barbara Mayfield, she's one of the famous dietitians in our profession, in our field. She is very well known for communicating nutrition, and is an authoritative guide on that, is an expert in that area. And she spent a good portion of her career working with other students, dietitians, others on how to more effectively communicate nutrition, and has written the authoritative guide to communicating nutrition. And this is a really important book. I have my copy. It is really, really impactful. I hope you guys can all get a copy of that. We can talk about that as well. But Barbara Mayfield and I met at Fancy in this past year, and I got to be able to swoon over all the amazing work that she's done. I was super interested in her and her craft and being able to communicate nutrition, and also this book, which is just chock full of really, really helpful information for dietitians and nutrition professionals on how to communicate nutrition. And so, Barbara, so you got your start in communicating, and your expertise in communication by being a teacher at Purdue University. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So my experience in teaching nutrition communication started in late 1999. I was invited by my alma mater. I was a student at Purdue University previously, to come back and teach what had been my favorite course when I was a student there 20 years before, and that was nutrition communication. The professor that had been my instructor was retiring, and would I be interested in coming back and teaching? And I was thrilled. That was my favorite course. And little did I know when I was a student, as well as most of the time that I was teaching, that a course in nutrition communications is really a rarity in a DPD program. And yet it was the one course that I used more than any other in my 20 years prior to teaching, and I believe is just critical to the success of all of us as dietitians to communicate nutrition well. And so I said yes to Purdue. And so from the year 2000 through the year 2016, which is when I retired from teaching, every single semester I taught that course. I did teach other courses while I was at Purdue, but none of them every single semester. And since retiring, I've had the pleasure of going back and teaching one of those classes again. It is still my favorite course.
Oh, I love that story. I love that. Well, I think it sounds like you found an interest in it, but it sounds like also, I think you were tapped because you were very good at communicating, or also very good at reaching students, reaching your audience to be versed in communication and communicating nutrition. That seems to be sort of the background to it. How did you sort of create? So you taught, and then how did communicating nutrition become sort of this area of your expertise as a career? Like how did that evolve?
So really, when I started as a student at Purdue back in the 70s, my initial career goal was to be a food journalist. So my aspiration was to write recipes and food articles and possibly become the editor of Good Housekeeping or something like that. Now, I've never been a food journalist, but that's where I began. And so I started in a major that Purdue had called Foods and Nutrition and Business. And I added to that major as many communication courses as I could take. There wasn't an official minor, but I basically got the equivalent of at least a minor in communications. Well, my advisor in foods and nutrition, that was what our major was called at that time, our department was called at that time, advised me to double major in dietetics. She said, it's only going to be a couple of extra courses, and it will give you the ability to be eligible for the RD credential. Thought that was a great idea, and I have never regretted it. Certainly getting that credential has opened opportunities that I wouldn't have had with simply a degree in foods and nutrition. So my interest in nutrition and food and communication really started as a freshman. However, it evolved. As I went through my undergraduate coursework, I realized that I not only loved learning about food, I loved learning about nutrition, and hearing some guest speakers that talked about nutrition education and other aspects of communicating nutrition just opened up my eyes to the breadth of what we could do in communicating nutrition. And even though I've never become a food journalist, everything that I've done in my career, from private practice to long-term care to working 20 years in the WIC program, all used communication so much. I did lots of speaking across the country that was related to my work with WIC in teaching children about nutrition. And that's really what got me invited back to Purdue, that I had done so much writing and speaking, developing materials that used that course I took and put it into practice.
Well, I think everyone sort of recognized you became very well known as a very strong nutrition communicator, and you were then tapped to be able to put together this amazing book. I want to go back to talking about this book because this is how your knowledge can reach all of us as dietitians, dietetic students, anybody interested in communicating nutrition. So going back to how this book got started, how did you get tapped to be a part of this book? I mean, I think you've got a great story behind it, but I'm just curious to know if you want to share like how you were able to do that. And I should say that you are the editor of this book, and there are lots of contributors. And so tell us like how you got tapped to be the editor of that book.
That's a fun backstory. So let's share that, Stacey, because I think it helps illustrate how one thing leads to another. And really nothing in your career should be wasted. So again, throughout my career, I had done writing and speaking. And then of course I taught nutrition communication. And so when the Academy invited me, they had a lot of requests for some type of a resource on nutrition communication, and nothing existed like that. And I knew that nothing existed like that because the only thing that they'd had in print went out of print about the time that I started teaching. And during the time that I taught, it was so hard to find references. You were just kind of pulling from everywhere. During the time that I was teaching, one of the work experiences that I did kind of on the side was writing a textbook in basic nutrition for non-majors. And that was a several-year project. It was so hard. Writing a textbook is a huge amount of work. And I told so many people while I was doing that I'm never doing this again. It just killed me. But I was teaching at the same time. Well, unlike when I wrote Communicating Nutrition, I had retired, though, totally different. But one of the reviewers for that textbook which is no longer in print. It was called Nutrition for Everyone, to think about that a minute, was Roberta Dife. And Roberta Dife is an author who has done a lot of writing for the Academy and serves on committees that choose future authors. So she had reviewed my work. She knew I could write and could write a textbook. And so when they were debating who to invite, she suggested my name. So again, everything that you do leads to other things. And so you just never know. And I could give you so many stories of that.
I think that's so true. I mean, I think a lot of people are sort of fixated on the big goal, which is good to have, like the big goal of if you want to be a nutrition writer or open up your own private practice or something. But all those steps along the way where we meet other people that can help us move into a new direction or encourage us in learning, whatever it might be, opportunities, that networking element is so powerful. I love that story.
And they wouldn't have known that I taught at Purdue University, even though it's only 2 hours away from their headquarters in Chicago.
Yeah.
That isn't how they would have known me. And so you really do have to put your work out there. And the more people that you work with and know your work and the quality of your work, the better.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that part of the story. So I am fascinated by the whole creative process of putting this book together. I got my own copy. I sat down and I devoured it in a short amount of time. It's a huge book. I'm gonna run and get it. Hang on one second.
It's okay. 700 pages. Yes.
Yes, you guys, it is such a great book. I'm going to show you how you can get your own copy of it. But so I'm so curious about, when I opened it up, I was thinking it was written by you, but it wasn't just written by you. It was a collaboration of 57 authors plus like a ton of reviewers. Like there's a lot of people that went into this. So tell us any amount that you want to share with us. Like what's that process of communicating with all those people to create the book on communicating nutrition? Like that must have been really fun.
It was. And there were challenges to working with that many people. I love organizing things. So it was something that I enjoyed doing. And I really, from the start, when I was invited to do this, I said, I'm not an expert on everything that needs to be in this book. And yeah, I could write about it, but let's get the people who really do television work or give food demonstrations all the time or write journal articles, whatever the case may be. Let's get their input. I didn't know that when I started out that it would be quite that many people that would be involved, but I knew it needed to be more than just me. But it also went back to one of the things that I really believe in is that you work with your audience in order to create communication. And so doing a needs assessment is step number one. And so we created surveys that we sent to educators who taught nutrition to dietetic students and got their input on what needed to be in it as it relates to being a textbook. But we knew that we were also writing it for current nutrition professionals. So we also surveyed nutrition professionals, focusing on those that did the most work that was communication related, although we all communicate. But we targeted, I believe it was like 7 dietetics practice groups and NDEP to send out these surveys. So it went to thousands of members. As part of that survey, probably like the last 2 questions or something was, would you be interested in serving as an author or a reviewer? We got hundreds of responses saying yes, which was exciting. That was saying they believed in this and that they had something to put into it. So that was huge and exciting. And I only, of those 57 authors, I only knew 7.
Oh, really?
At all. Like, even knew who they were.
Right.
They were not picked because they were my cronies.
Right, exactly. No,
at all.
I was so fascinated by
there was one person there were several people I invited kind of specifically. One of the youngest people who was an author had been a student and who after she had graduated, she had come back, she had done a lot of media work, right getting out of school. And she would come and speak to my students about that. And so I invited her to help write one of the chapters on media, just to give that perspective. She's a clinical RD, but she loved doing media interviews with the local TV. So I wanted that story in there. I invited my major professor from Cornell, where I did graduate work, to help me write the first chapter. And I invited, let me think, there was like one other person, maybe that's it. But otherwise, they were people that I've gotten to know, but I did not know them before.
I think that speaks to the range of dietitians that are editors of this, and who are, are authors of each of the chapters. Like, there's just so many different topics, and I think that brings home the idea that how communicating nutrition is so ubiquitous to our profession as dietitians, whether you're working with patients, whether you're working with the media, as we sort of think traditionally, working on TV or in print magazine or on social media, bloggers, or working with other business associates, being able to secure, insurance reimbursement, getting that relationship set up, or corporate wellness. There's just so many avenues where, as dietitians, we need to be able to communicate well, and also be able to communicate our craft, nutrition. So who do you see this book being able to speak to, or who do you think this book can help?
Honestly, every future and current nutrition professional. That's it. That's all of us. It really, because
I was gonna say, is there anybody this doesn't apply to? And I can't think of who that would be.
It's for everybody, and which made it challenging. That's a pretty broad audience. And a lot of the authors think we really should have taken nutrition out of the title because it could be for nurses or whatever. I was like, well, it's kind of good to be a little niche-y, but the examples would be different. But again, communication is so fundamental to our success as a human being, that one of the things I would often tell my students is that even if you choose not to be a dietitian or even work in this field, related, nutrition, whatever, what you learn in this class will be useful to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's translatable to everything we do.
Yeah, I agree. The one area that I thought was interesting is that so you talk about communicating nutrition and doing it effectively, doing it with intention, doing it well so that your patient can hear you, so that maybe you can negotiate a little bit better, so that you can have better relationships with maybe other healthcare professionals. But I think sort of the idea is that what's the cost of not communicating well?
It is significant. So, to use a term we like to use in evidence-based practice, in medicine, poor communication can be fatal. I mean, there's evidence that a breakdown in communication, however that takes place, whether it's between a practitioner and a patient, or between clinicians in the transfer of care, or in improper whatever, that can be fatal. It can be life-threatening. But on a lower level, just think about all the times that somehow something that you've said or written was misunderstood, or confused people, or there was misinformation or disinformation on purpose, or a message that you had was ignored because it didn't speak to the audience. It's so essential to our success in our work and to make a difference that what we do is communicated well, effectively.
Yeah.
No matter how we communicate or who we communicate to.
Right. I think a great example also is when you're job interviewing, if you're not able to communicate all the amazing work that you've done. It's not that you have to get more skills or more experience necessarily. It's sometimes just being able to reword what your resume might look like and how you can pull out the value of what you've done and to just show what impact that's had. So it's just like really simple things sometimes of just turning around a conversation so that it can be heard differently or be more impactful. So in the book, I just want to share, I want to tell everybody like where they can actually get the book. And then I have a few more questions for you. So you can get the book on Amazon, of course, but you can also get it on eatrightstore.org, and you can order it there. There's a discount for members, and this is how you can find it otherwise on Amazon. There's like tons of different charts and tables, cheat sheets, worksheets. I mean, it is like there's so much great information in here, but maybe you can take a minute and maybe give all of us out here, what are some key communication strategies that we can use, or some nuggets that you can share with us that can make us be more effective communicators? You can answer it however you want to, like how you think we could benefit.
When you put that question in the Google Docs, you use the phrase wisdom nuggets. I thought that was such a crafty phrase. So I'm going to give you 3 wisdom nuggets that you can chew on, and they relate to actually something that's on page 40 in the book.
Okay.
That is kind of the essential components of nutrition communication. There's like 3 essential components to focus on. So I'm going to give you a wisdom nugget in each of those areas. And the first one is an audience. Having an audience focus is critical. And the wisdom nugget that I want you to really remember is communication is a relational activity between communicator and audience. Think about it being a relationship. And you want to build that relationship by knowing your audience, by interacting with them, learning as much as you can about them so you can speak their language and make what you communicate with them really resonate and meaningful, that you use examples they understand. So the more that you know your audience and that you receive feedback from them and use it, get them involved. So audience focused. Number, it's a relationship. All right. So that's wisdom nugget number 1.
That's good. Look, I'm just gonna expand on it. So if you are, so let's say you're job interviewing, you want to know like who the company is, and maybe even the hiring manager, like who that person is. Yep. Or if you're a diabetes educator and you're trying to work with the family, understand what their level of fear is, what their level of background information, what their, if anyone else in the family has diabetes and how to do that. Like I can see like how it can go like and the obvious one is when you're giving a talk, let's say on nutrition, you got to, do you have teens that you're talking to? Or are they toddlers, or are they people who've been around the block for a while? Like totally understanding your audience so that you can understand what they need to hear so they can be engaged and to meet their needs and to create this great relationship. That's good. Okay. I'm ready for nugget number 2.
And to stay on that one, we devote an entire section of the book to being audience focused. It translates into everything. As you were talking, I'm thinking, I'm on the board of our local opera house, and I write lots of grants. I always try to get to know who the grant administrator is that I'm applying for. Like it applies to everything.
I wouldn't have thought of that. That is really, you're
like everything. Yes, everything. Know your audience. Okay. So wisdom nugget number 2 is related to that second component. So we've got audience. The second is message. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. You're communicating a message, but work with your audience so that you're creating a message that they need, they want, that will be meaningful to them. And I give you 4 C's to remember. It should be clear, it should be concise, it should be correct, and it should be compelling. And so if you can create a message that has those characteristics, and you've done it with your audience, if you follow the message development model we have in chapter 10, you'll just be a smashing success, because your message is going to be meaningful. It's going to be memorable. It's going to be motivating. It's going to make a difference. So there's 4 M's. So,
I like that. Yeah.
so there's that wisdom nugget about messages. And I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it, and we cover a lot of things in the book about researching, making sure. So in order to be current, you have to have that evidence base. We do pretty good at that, but are we clear? Do we use words that, or do we use jargon? So that's really important.
I think in the book, like you mentioned, you have those templates. Like, so we're talking in broad terms, but if you're working with social media, you're going to use a certain combination of words and a certain volume, smaller number of paragraphs for writing for a blog, or so but in the book, you have templates. You show us specifically how to do that for a bunch of different scenarios. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
Which leads really to the third nugget, is related to the third component that you're looking at, and that's your channel, or how do you deliver this message? And there's so many different channels. We were talking before we started this recording that the channels are ever evolving. So we have all these different channels that we cover in the book, from podcasting, which 20 years ago, we would have been talking about radio shows, media interviews, things like we're doing today. But who knows what's going to be coming in the future? But fundamentally, the way we communicate and what's going to make it effective doesn't change that much, but we need to be constantly willing to experiment with those new channels and do our best with them, learn how to use them best. We sure have learned an awful lot about making Zoom more effective as we really went virtual starting in 2020. So the main wisdom nugget, though, that I want to leave with you is that you don't have to be someone else when you're delivering your message. Be authentically you.
Oh, I like
so
that.
Grow your skill in whatever channel you're using, but be you, because you're the person that is needed to make a difference with that audience, with that message that only you can give.
It's true that every dietitian is a snowflake. Every dietitian is unique in their background, their cultural background, their personal background, and how they even just deliver it, how they communicate. It's going to be different. We may all, fall into categories of, maybe half of us are clinical dietitians, the other half are entrepreneurs, like whatever that might look like. But we're also unique, and I love the idea that just embrace that, because that's how you can reach your audience. That's how you can set yourself apart and not feel, and then you can, as you say, more authentically communicate. And anytime anyone authentically communicates, like, it is so much more attention grabbing. It is so much more, there's so much more heart into it, and you can hear it better. You can engage better with that person, receive that information better. And it all benefits. Yeah.
Well, it helps you build that relationship that communication is.
Right.
Because you're being you. And not someone else. Don't try to be someone else. I mean, other people can be role models for you or give you great suggestions or ways that you might want to try something, but be you.
Yeah, be you. Well, so speaking of like the idea of being you, or that whole idea, I was struck by how many great quotes that I highlighted in this book, or just little sections in this book that I highlighted. But here's the one that I think can really be beneficial for a lot of people to hear and to know, because I'll admit, like, communication is not something that we're all born with. So wait, I'm jumping ahead. I'm like actually using your quote, but I'll just say, like, sometimes we just get intimidated thinking about communication. So here's your quote. So communications, skilled and effective communications, are made, not born. Right. I love that. Tell us more about that.
So communicators are made, not born. And one of the places in the book that I love the way that she puts this is in the foreword by Ella Krieger. She emphasizes this point. And I think that she probably chose to do that because she probably gets people looking at her and goes, she was probably just born to be on TV. Maybe, but probably not. We are
Probably
all
not, right?
learning. We are all growing. And this communication is something you learn by doing. So even though I totally encourage you to buy the book and read it, I even more so encourage you to put it into practice. Start communicating and trying things and experimenting with your writing and your speaking and blogging and everything else you want to try. Because you get better by doing it.
Yeah, exactly. I devoured this book, as I said previously, and I walked away feeling I had this interesting reaction. Of course, I learned a lot of information, but I walked away with feeling so inspired and feeling like this really warm sense of community with my fellow dietitians and nutrition communicators. I was sort of surprised at that reaction that I had. I felt like this really strong sense of community and how we're all going to move forward and be more effective communicators. Did you have any other idea for people to? Well, I guess what were your hopes for what people would walk away with after having devoured this book like I did?
Really very similar to what your experience and that, and another word I guess I would like to use besides inspired, because I love that, but also empowered. I would hope that someone would just feel like, I can do this and I want to do this, and feel ready to say yes when the media calls, or yes when someone says, would someone give a presentation on such and such at the food bank? Yes.
Yeah.
Just want to communicate nutrition and feel empowered to do it with skill and expertise and get better and better at it.
I think that's what this book does. I think it just gives you the backbone of confidence to be able to move forward, because you've got a lot of practical information in here. It's not just didactic stuff. It's a lot of really practical information that you can practice on your own before you go into. So for example, like if you're a clinical dietitian and you're going into rounds and you haven't done this before, and you're going to round on a patient and they're going to go around the room and all of the allied services are there, and then they're going to call on you, and you got to say, be an advocate for the patient, but being able to communicate that concisely and succinctly and getting your message across. I think this book helps in all those situations, right? Like every type of situation. So I am so appreciative that you spent 4 years was it 4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 years putting this book together, and thank all of the authors that were also part of this. A lot of my other dietitian friends, 57 people, plus a whole bunch of reviewers that were behind the scenes that were contributing to this book. I just thank you so much for taking the time to evangelize communicating nutrition with all of us, and also giving us some practical information. I'm really, really in awe of it. So you guys all know you can get this book on Amazon, of course, but you can also get the ebook version let me move back up again, over at the eatrightstore.org. That is where you can get both the ebook and also the print book. And again, if you're a member, you can get a big juicy discount on that book as well. I'm going to run through a couple more things, just going to show everybody, remind them all about nutrition jobs. We've got lots of courses on how to be able to job interview well with confidence. You got LinkedIn work that you can do, and resume work that you can do that I can help you with. And I've got resume templates that you can download. We got lots of good stuff. We've always got an instant workshop makeover going on that you can get a lot of information personalized to your work. Please do go over to nutritionjobs.com and grab your copy of the LinkedIn profile checklist. It will make all the difference in your future and future opportunities in communicating on LinkedIn. And do subscribe on YouTube and hit the little subscribe and the little bell. And every time we have something out there for you, you can watch it right away and be on the forefront of everything that's related to nutrition and dietetics. And again, thank you so much, Barbara, for coming and sharing all your expertise, your background, and being an advocate for dietitians and nutrition professionals.
Thank you.
And this is how you can reach Barbara. She's on LinkedIn, she's on Instagram, she's on Facebook, she's on Twitter. She's got a really great website as well, nutritioncommunicator.com. Please do check that out. It is also full of opportunities. You can actually work with Barbara and her team and being coached on one-on-one coaching for communicating nutrition as well. And you guys all know how to reach me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and bye for now, everyone.